The person who might soon run the world's most valuable company is someone most people have never Googled. John Ternus has spent 23 years building the things you hold in your hands, the chips, the chassis, the aluminum hinges, while staying almost entirely invisible. Apple's next CEO might not be a visionary. He might not be a showman. He might just be the person who figured out what a hinge should feel like. Ternus joined Apple in 2001. He survived the iPod era, the iPhone revolution, and a decade of supply chain warfare alongside Tim Cook. He rose to lead hardware engineering, the division responsible for every physical object Apple makes. Not the apps. Not the services subscription tier. The actual objects. The aluminum. The glass. The thing you drop into a toilet and immediately regret. In 2020, Ternus stood on stage and announced Apple was abandoning Intel processors and building its own chips for the Mac. That sounds like an IT department memo. It was actually one of the most audacious bets in modern tech history. Apple fired its chip supplier of 15 years, a company with decades of x86 market dominance, and replaced them with silicon they cooked up internally. And it worked. Devastatingly well. We tend to think of Apple CEOs in two distinct flavors. Steve Jobs, the reality distortion field, the turtleneck, the product as spiritual experience. Tim Cook, the supply chain savant who turned Apple into a trillion-dollar logistics operation. Both had an internal logic. But neither of them actually built the chip. Ternus did. That is a different kind of authority, one earned not from the stage, but from the substrate. There is a school of thought in Silicon Valley that software is where ideas live and hardware is merely the container. Ternus represents the opposing view that the container shapes the idea. The M1 chip did not simply run existing software faster. It redefined what software was architecturally possible. When you control the physics, you control the roadmap. Apple has always believed this. They may now finally put the believer in charge. This matters with particular force right now. Every major technology company is racing to build AI systems, and the bottleneck is no longer the algorithm, it is the hardware underneath it. Training models, running inference at scale, fitting intelligence into a device that fits inside a pocket, these are hardware problems. The next era of computing will be won or lost in silicon. Appointing a chip architect as CEO is Apple saying, quietly, that they understand which game they are actually playing. What a Ternus appointment signals to the wider industry is a deliberate reversal. For a decade the narrative was that software was eating the world. Now the world is eating silicon. Nvidia became more valuable than most national economies. The AI infrastructure race is, at its foundation, a manufacturing and design problem. Apple, with Ternus at the helm, would be placing its bet explicitly on this premise, that the company which designs the best hardware, not merely sells it, wins the next decade. Every Apple product you have used for the past 5 years, the M Series Macs, the latest iPhones, the chips inside Vision Pro runs on silicon that Ternus's teams designed from first principles. The CEO who follows Tim Cook will not just manage that legacy. They will decide whether Apple remains a premium consumer hardware company or becomes the computing platform the next 10 years of AI runs on. That decision has already been made, in silicon, by the person who built it. Strip away the succession drama and what remains is a single, quiet bet, that the next decade of computing will be won in the foundry, not on the stage. Ternus didn't accumulate authority by pitching vision, he accumulated it by designing the substrate that made other people's visions physically possible. The M Series chips, the Intel severance, the architecture decisions that redefined what a laptop could do, those weren't announcements. They were positions. Taken years before anyone outside Cupertino knew his name. Apple has spent 5 years placing this wager in silicon. Putting Ternus at the helm is just the moment they say it out loud. What strikes us isn't that a hardware engineer might run the world's most valuable company. It's what that move reveals about where power was hiding all along. For 20 years, the story we told ourselves was that software ate the world, and mostly we believed it. The rock stars were the product managers, the platform builders, the people holding clickers on stage. The people who designed the physics were backstage, anonymous, getting the details right on a hinge. Now the physics might be running the show. Which leaves us with a question we genuinely don't know how to answer. If the bottleneck has shifted from ideas to silicon, who decides which ideas are even worth having?